Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes Tottenham blog and to a bit of a different video today. As you can see, we're going to be talking today about the handball rule and trying to talk through the directives coming straight from the International Football Association board to see if we can figure out what in the name of God this handball rule is. Fans are confused, players are confused, managers are confused, and judging by the decisions we've seen on the field in the last couple of weeks, referees are also confused. So we're going to be looking through the IFAB directives, the diagram they've given, I suppose, as to what actually constitutes a handball, and also looking at some from BT Sport as well. They've given a little summary of that new handball rule, so we can try and figure out what that is. Look, as always, if you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for all things Tottenham, including transfer talk, which I'm focusing mainly on for the next week or so. But after that, we're going to be doing match previews, reviews, and general Tottenham analysis videos. And I'm assuming there are some non-Tottenham fans in this video. If you are new to the channel, if you don't keep up with Tottenham, do hit subscribe. But if you're not, I would suggest avoiding that button down below. But look, it's no secret. There's been huge controversy in the world of football, in the Premier League, especially in the last couple of weeks with this new handball rule. It was updated before the start of last season, which caused a bit of confusion. It did cause a bit of frustration, but I suppose we did get used to it by the end of the season, and I think it proved itself to be a bit logical, I suppose, in that the rule last season was any handball, deliberate or not, which leads to a goal or which prevents a goal is penalised, which I think makes sense, and I think is something that we could, if we do kind of strip back this handball rule again, is perhaps something that we could see brought into the game in the future. But it's these new rules from IFAB which are absolutely ridiculous, and look, let's just dive right into it and see what IFAB have to say. But it's an absolute joke. So an explanation here they have at the top. For the purposes of handball, the arm starts at the bottom or end of the armpit, as shown in the diagram on page 14. So that diagram they're talking about is this one here on the right. So the general sort of guideline to this, which we've heard from commentators, I'm not sure it's actually come directly from IFAB or any sort of governing body, but the kind of general rule is if it's below the sleeve on the jersey, the decision to be made, it is a potential handball. If it is above that, if it does hit the sleeve, kind of generally that will be in line with the bottom of the armpit. So I'm not sure if you can see it there on the right as well, but they say for the purposes of determining handball offences, the upper boundary of the arm is in line with the bottom of the armpit. So the upper boundary of the arm is in line with the bottom of the armpit. So we'll just go through these this kind of summary that we have here. The amended text is as follows: it is an offence if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand or arm, including moving the hand or arm towards the ball. So that, I think, in the past that on its own has been the handball rule for dozens and dozens and dozens of years, which was accepted in football. We had no problem with that. The thing that made them start tinkering around with this rule was that goal Willy Bolly scored for Wolves against Manchester City a couple of seasons ago, where he went in for a diving header and missed the ball, and his hand, which he'd put out to break his fall, the ball struck off his hand and went in then, and that is why we have started to see the tinkering in this rule. Continuing, scores, if a player scores in the opponent's goal directly from their hand or arm, even if accidental, including by the goalkeeper. So that's what was brought into effect last season, which, as I said, we have become accustomed to, and I think personally I do appreciate that rule, because that goal that Wolves scored against City, I think that game ended in a 1-1 draw, so it cost Man City 2 points. And even looking at, I suppose, effect it had on Tottenham last season with Manchester City when we played them at the Etihad, that last minute goal from Aymeric Laporte, when I think it was controlled by the hand of maybe Gabriel Jesus, or was it the other way around? Or hit Laporte's arm and Gabriel Jesus scored. I think that not only because it was for Tottenham, but because it was a handball that directly led to a goal, even though it was accidental, I think it is unfair on the defensive team. And the rule there defensively is the same, but I know we didn't see it brought into. It wasn't enforced too often. We saw Trent Alexander-Arnold when they beat Manchester City at Anfield, when that cross was going past him and he stuck his arm out to the side, struck his hand, Liverpool went straight down the other end and scored. So even though I think the rule last season was good, we did see a lot of inconsistency in the way it was enforced, and the fact now that they've added to this rule, they've made it more complicated, and the inconsistencies are now, they're showing more, and it's happening a lot more. It's deeply concerning. They go on to say, so this is a bit, look, that I'm struggling to understand. As far as I can gather, that the bits that are crossed out are the bits they've taken out of the rule. and the bits that are underlined in yellow are the bits that they have brought into it. But it is still a bit confusing. So the rule last season would have been gains possession or control of the ball after it has touched their hand or arm, and then the player immediately either scores or creates a goal scoring opportunity. So that was last season's rule. Whereas this season's rule is now, it is an offence if a player, after the ball has touched their or a teammate's hand or arm, even if accidental, immediately scores in the opponent's goal or creates a goal scoring opportunity. So the difference there is, last season it was if there was a handball in the build up to a goal, but now it has to immediately lead to the goal being scored. And now we're going to bring this back to Chelsea against West Brom on Saturday, and Chelsea's last minute equaliser, where the ball was crossed in. Kai Havertz controlled it kind of in between. It kind of hit his chest and ricocheted onto his arm, but it was obviously a massive part of him controlling the ball, because it kind of got wedged in between his body and his arm. I think a West Brom defender then got a foot to the ball. It came out to Mason Mount. He struck it. The keeper saved it, and then Tammy Abraham tapped in the rebound. I think they have brought these rules in to try and make these handball decisions objective rather than subjective. But what constitutes a handball that immediately leads to the goal? No matter what they do, no matter how they change this rule, there's still going to be a huge element of every decision being subjective, because you can't say definitively whether or not that Kai Havertz handball immediately led to the goal. There's no doubt it did lead to the goal. It was, if that handball accidental didn't happen, the goal wouldn't have been scored. But say 2 years ago that would have been allowed. Last year it would have been disallowed, and now this year again that same incident is being allowed, and it's causing mass confusion. Nobody knows what to expect when the ball strikes the player's arm in and around the penalty area. I think that's what the general feeling at the moment is. It's going to be given no matter what, but it's just too confusing, and they're changing this rule. It's the little tiniest changes that they're making, but it's making a huge impact on the pitch, and it's I think you can just tell from the uproar in the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, exactly how people actually feel about this. Now this says, except for the above offences, it is not an offence if the ball touches a player's hand or arm. I think there's supposed to be something continued there. So the explanation is a clarification. Clarification that if an attacking player accidentally touches the ball with their hand or arm, and the ball then goes to another attacking player and the attacking team immediately scores, this is a handball offence. It is not an offence if, after an accidental handball, the ball travels some distance, pass or dribble, and or there are several passes before the goal or goal scoring opportunity. So this second one, what this says to me, it is not an offence if the ball travels some distance and there are several passes before the goal. What that says to me is Kai Havertz's goal against, or Tammy Abraham's equaliser against West Brom should have been disallowed, because the ball did not travel some distance after Kai Havertz's handball. The ball hit his hand, it was half cleared, a shot, and then a goal. A goal off a second shot. That did not travel some distance. There weren't several passes in between that. This is the confusion, that even referees don't seem to understand this rule. And it goes on there, there's updates to the goalkeeper's handball with yellows and red cards. It's an absolute joke. It is absolutely ridiculous. But look, I'm really struggling to understand this. Looking at the kind of guidelines BT gave out, they've said IFAB have amended the handball law to ensure an accidental handball will only be punished if it occurs immediately before a goal is scored. Quote from them, it is not an offence, as we were just saying there, it is not an offence if, after an accidental handball, the ball travels some distance and or there are several passes before the goal or goal scoring opportunity, read a statement from IFAB. So again, I would straight out say Abraham's goal against West Brom should have been disallowed. The handball rule was clarified last season to state that any goal scored or created with the use of the hand or arm will be disallowed, even if it is accidental. It does not consider intent by a player, which is kind of where the main frustration is coming from. It was such a good rule for so long that if the handball was deliberate, it was penalised. If it wasn't, it's not. There's no question of, oh, was it hand to ball or ball to hand anymore. It's gone simply down to, has the ball touched the arm below the armpit. It's an absolutely ridiculous rule, and we can only say that so many times, but it really is. If the ball hits a player who has made their body unnaturally bigger, then a foul will be awarded. IFAB determined that a hand or arm above shoulder height is rarely a natural position, with some exceptions such as when a player is falling permitted. So I think that with when a player is falling permitted comes back to the goal Tottenham had disallowed at Bramall Lane after the restart last season, when Lucas Moura was fouled. and then the ball was kicked off his arm that was breaking his fall. Harry Kane scored, which would have made the game 1-0 at that, or 1-1 at that stage. And Lucas was penalised for handball, even though he was fouled and he was breaking a fall. And Tottenham went on to lose that game 3-1. We went 3-0 down. It's too late for that exact addition to the rule, but IFAB says that having the hand or arm above shoulder height is rarely a natural position, and the player is taking a risk by having the hand or arm in that position. Now, this next bit, I've been saying in the last couple of days, I know a lot of people have, or in the last day or so, the decision from Chris Kavanagh on Sunday to award Newcastle a penalty in the last couple of minutes against Tottenham Hotspur. You know, obviously as a Spurs fan, I was absolutely fuming to see that given. I wasn't happy with it at all. But from what I understood the rules before yesterday, I thought it was unfair to give the stick to Chris Kavanagh, because he was effectively following the rules, and it is the rules themselves that are the problem rather than the referees and the people enforcing them. However, extra leeway will be permitted when it comes to ricocheted handballs, when it comes off a nearby player, or if they cannot see the ball. Now both of those apply to Eric Dyer, who was jumping up with the player directly behind him. He could not see the ball, and it ricocheted off Andy Carroll right behind him and hit his hand, and he could not see it. So by the law, by the rule of the game, that penalty yesterday should not have been given to Newcastle. You know, we can talk about the fact that the free kick was Joe Linton essentially jumping into Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. The referee wasn't looking, and he heard a scream and decided to give a free kick to Newcastle. We can talk about the questionable lines that were drawn. Was Andy Carroll actually offside when that free kick went in? The push on Eric Dyer. We can talk about all these, but the final decision itself to award a penalty to Newcastle for a handball against Eric Dyer, simply as it states there, should not have been given. Extra leeway will be permitted when it comes to ricocheted handballs, when it comes off a nearby player, or if they cannot see the ball. Both of those apply to Eric Dyer, and Tottenham have been robbed of 2 points yesterday. Absolutely robbed after a fantastic performance. Yes, we didn't kill off the game. It was our own fault. Our game management wasn't good enough. But the penalty should not have been given. Fair play to Steve Bruce for coming out after the game and talking about how terrible those decisions were. Fair play to Roy Hodgson when Crystal Palace got the good side of this rule against Manchester United when a penalty was awarded on Victor Lindelof. Fair play to Hodgson for coming out and talking out against the rule. But something needs to be changed, something needs to be done. And look, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, we as fans, we can also change this game, change this rule, and it's going to be more difficult for us to do it. It's going to be more difficult for any sort of fan to have an influence, but the managers are talking about getting together to fight this. We see pundits, we see analysts, absolutely everybody talking out against this rule. Players now bringing to social media. The uproar after yesterday with Peter Crouch, Andros Townsend, Jan Vertonghen, and I know they're all former Spurs players, but they were talking out, they were giving out about this rule. And Clive Tilsley, the former ITV commentator, he put up a video on Twitter, and he was saying, contact David Ellery. He's the technical director of IFAB, and he made the point, and I've made the point there, do not be abusive in any way towards David Ellery. If you do wish to contact him, just simply, list out your worries, list out what you feel is wrong with this rule, and we need to get a change, because we went the whole of last season without seeing any change to the dreadful rules that we did have. And Charlie Eccleshare, who works with the Athletic, put up a fantastic tweet late last night, or yesterday evening. He said, I do wonder if part of the problem is that having video assistant referees has forced a decision to be made on precisely what a handball is. Feel like previously it was vaguer, but roughly speaking you knew one when you saw one, and that kind of worked because it is an inexact science. And I do think that is a really good point by Charlie Eccleshare. We're having to make these decisions. First of all, look, these decisions are being judged more harshly because the referees do have more time to look at it. They can look at it as many times as they do want, and they do seem to be taking that time. But, as I was saying, a handball decision is always going to be subjective. It is always going to be subjective, no matter how you change it, no matter what you do, unless you say if the ball hits the arm in any way, it's a handball, which you can't do because that's just not fair. No matter what you do to this rule, it is going to be subjective, and they're trying their best to make it objective, but it just can't be done within the reasonable and fair rules of the game. With any sort of logic, it cannot be made objective, and it will always be subjective. So what they are doing by adding these little changes to the rule, and as I said, trying to make it objective, they're making it more confusing, and they're making it harsher, and they're just ruining it. And was it Roy Hodgson said, his enjoyment of the game has gone down an unimaginable amount after this rule has been brought in. And again, that includes his team getting a decision against Manchester United, which I would argue won the game for them. It put them 2-0 up. Or was it 3-1? Whichever it was, it put them 2 goals ahead. And we have to listen to someone like Roy Hodgson saying this, Steve Bruce saying it. I know Jose Mourinho yesterday refused to comment on it. But I don't know how, if we do make noise about this, I don't know how we're going to be ignored. I don't know how this rule can continue. And the argument last season was, I think, mainly with was it the handball rule as well, I think, where they said because it came into effect at the start of the season, they had to see it through. It was the offside rule, I think, actually. Because it came into effect at the start of the season and was enforced in the opening weeks, it had to be seen through the whole season. And we cannot have this handball rule in effect in the Premier League for a whole year. It can't happen. And we need to make noise, we need to make our voices heard, and we need to get change in this rule. It's going to be difficult, but look, it needs to be done, and hopefully we can see a change in this. And look, I'm not only saying this because I'm a Tottenham fan who's been aggrieved with the decision yesterday. I said it after that game against United. No, live kind of looking at it, I was kind of half watching it because I was streaming as well. I thought, maybe that is a penalty. But that one, the decision in the Crystal Palace and Everton game, the decision, was there one yesterday? Was there another one this weekend? Oh, of course, the Havertz one against West Brom. There have been so many decisions that I, along with every fan, has been absolutely furious with. And I thought it was a disgrace to see Callum Wilson after the game yesterday laughing, saying, "Oh, well, it helped me, so I'm happy." It's ridiculous, and I can't wait till it comes back to bite Callum Wilson and Newcastle get struck back by one of those decisions. I'd love to see what he'd have to say then. But look, put down in the comments what you do feel on this rule. I doubt there is anyone out there who agrees with it. But if you do, put it down in the comments below. I hope this has clarified the handball rule some bit for you. Personally, I do understand it a bit more, but I still have a lot of questions to ask about this. So make sure to pop down in the comments below your opinions on this. If you have enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. And if you feel it could help anyone else, make sure to share it. And hopefully we can get a better understanding of this handball rule. As always, if you are new to the channel and you want more Tottenham Hotspur transfer talk videos, general analysis videos and match previews and reviews, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And as always, thanks for watching.